touch across to Ayub Hussain, who is joining us from Kathmandu. He's someone who's reported for us extensively from ground zero. Ayub, आप हमको बता सकते हैं इस समय ग्राउंड पे सिचुएशन क्या है? क्योंकि हमें बताया जा रहा है कांग्रेस की ऑफिस को जला दिया गया है। अब ये बताया भी जा रहा है कि कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी का जो ऑफिस है उस तक को जला दिया गया है। अभी आप जहां पे हैं, आप कहां पे हैं, सबसे पहले बताइए, और वहां सिचुएशन क्या है?
हम मध्य प्रोविंस के इधर जनकपुर में है। खास करके जो इधर का अपडेट हम दे रहे हैं कि देखिए ठाव में आप देख रहे होंगे अभी वीडियो में, ठाव पे टायर जलाया गया है और दूसरा से बात ठाव में प्रदर्शन भी हो रहा है। और इधर खास करके इधर का अवस्था भी बहुत गंभीर देखने में आ रहा है, क्योंकि जितना देखा गया है और इधर वीडियो फोटोज लेने में प्रॉब्लम जी। मेरा आवाज जा रहा है? हाँ,
आप बोलते रहिए, थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम है लेकिन हम विल मैनेज। आप बताइए, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात बता रहे हैं क्योंकि आप प्रेसिडेंट्स हाउस से रिपोर्ट कर रहे हैं दैट इज करंटली बीइंग रैंसैक्ड बाय प्रोटेस्टर्स। आप बोलिए आयु
जी। देखिए इधर का अवस्था, जो प्रधानमंत्री केपी शर्मा ओली का जो घर पूरी तरह से तोड़ फोड़ दिया है, हम होगा तो वो भी वीडियो साझा करने का प्रयास करेंगे। पूरी तरह से तोड़ फोड़ दिया गया है अभी। और दूसरा बात, जो पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री पुष्प कमल दाहाल प्रचंड का भी घर में आगजनी कर दिया गया है। और पूर्व प्रधानमंत्री शेर बहादुर देवा का घर में भी अभी वो आगजनी कर दिया गया है। और दूसरा बात, आपको जो अन्य नेता सब जितना था, सूचना का जो मंत्री था, इसको भी घर में आगजनी कर दिया गया है। ठाव पे देखा जाए तो टायर बार कर प्रदर्शन कर रहा है जनता सब। अवस्था इधर का बहुत है, देख सकते हैं आप। साइड में पुलिस प्रशासन भी है इधर। और पत्रकार को भी वीडियो फोटो लेने में बहुत समस्या हो रही है, क्योंकि पत्रकार के ऊपर भी वार हो रहा है, अभी देखा गया है। इसीलिए बहुत समस्या हो रहा है। जितना हो सके उतना दिखाने की प्रयास कर रहे हैं आपसे।
ठीक है आयुब, देखते हैं whether we can try and connect with Ayub once again. But the pictures, ladies and gentlemen, on your screens are ones that are telling you that the situation in Nepal has not just escalated, it's completely out of control. You don't know whether the Oli government will survive or not. Chances are they won't. What you have on your screens is Nepal's president's house being ransacked. So look at this escalation. Yesterday, you had protesters storm Parliament. That is when police opens fire, paramilitary opens fire, and 19 people are killed. Post that, you have 4 ministers who have resigned. These are all Congress ministers who are in a coalition government with Prime Minister Oli. Then you have not just Nepal Congress's office being vandalized and set on fire, even the Communist Party of Nepal's office has been set on fire. Their leader, Prachanda's house, has been attacked. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this big escalation coming to us from Kathmandu, where protesters have actually managed to breach the president's residence, and that right now is being ransacked as we speak. These pictures are coming from there. These pictures also reminiscent of what had happened in Bangladesh and what had happened, if you remember, in Sri Lanka as well. Ayub, आप हमारे साथ हैं, जरा बताइए कि कितने लोग हैं, कितने स्टूडेंट्स हैं जिन्होंने प्रेसिडेंट हाउस को रैंसैक किया है? कल तो गोलियां चला दी थी आर्मी ने स्टूडेंट्स पे, आज लगता है कि थोड़ा बहुत वो लोग संयम बरत रहे हैं।
जी, प्रहरी सब आज संयम बरत रही है, लेकिन अवस्था देखा जाए तो बहुत इधर का डरावना अवस्था है। क्योंकि स्टूडेंट जितना देश भर का बात करें तो देश भर में जहाँ छोटा तह से लेकर बड़ा तह तक सब ठाव में प्रदर्शन हो रहा है देश भर में। और दूसरा से बात है, जो अभी केपी शर्मा ओली का घर है, जो भक्तपुर का बालकोट सूर्य विनायक नगर पालिका वार्ड नंबर 2 में, इस ठाव पे इससे पहले आज सुबह ही आपको कर्फ्यू लगाया गया था। लेकिन कर्फ्यू लगाने के बावजूद भी, पुलिस प्रशासन होने के बावजूद भी, अभी बहुत कम में हजारों की जनसंख्या में होगा स्टूडेंट सब।
ठीक है, तो आप मुझे बता रहे हैं तो खैर कर्फ्यू कल ही लग गया था। Abhijit, just come in here as we look at these pictures of Nepal's president's house being ransacked. Now, there's been a curfew in Kathmandu since yesterday. 19 people were killed because the army decided to open fire. Not a very good idea. Today, the curfew stays in place, yet our reporter on the ground is telling us that thousands and thousands of youngsters and people continue to be on the streets of Nepal. In fact, not just continue to be on the streets of Nepal, they are escalating matters, breaching the president's residence and completely ransacking it.
Where you've had a significant youth bulge because of unchecked population. You don't have the jobs to, cater to them. And this kind of, that peak youth period, your late teens, early 20s, without a job, very, very dangerous. This is how most of the Arab Spring started. When you have these so-called demographic dividends that countries aren't able to cater to in terms of jobs, employment, etc., etc. The problem, again, if you come back to the conversation we were having, is that special interests can exploit them. Is China exploiting this? Right now, we don't have any evidence of it. Far from it. A protest against Oli and Prachanda's house being burnt would seem to be quite anti-China in that sense, because both these leaders were very closely aligned with China. Remember, Shreya, both Prachanda and Oli are notorious India baiters. They've done a lot to harm India over the last few years. Is India doing this, as a lot of conspiracy theories suggest? No, because Indian interests are politicians friendly with India are also being attacked. Who can exploit it is, remember, there is a very close nexus between business and politics in Nepal. There will be a lot of businesses looking to get their claws out, especially because the current and the last government, Oli's Communist Party and Prachanda's Communist Party, were arm twisting a lot of businesses and the casinos and things like that, amongst other things, for money, extortion, etc., etc. They could possibly be involved. Again, we don't know who's doing the organizing, but given the internet disruptions out there, for crowds to just congregate like that is very suspicious. It requires organization to get to a certain spot. It requires coordination. The Nepal police almost certainly have WhatsApp intercept. They can certainly intercept messages saying, we're going to go to this place and things like that. So even the police's inaction in this particular case in protecting Prachanda's house, who is a former prime minister, the president's house, which you're showing visuals of, are we seriously to believe that the police did not know, or the armed forces did not know, or could not intercept messages, or that the internet was down and still the organization happened? I don't think so. So I think there might actually be some very significant, for want of a better word, sympathy. That's the most measured word I can use in this case, within the armed forces and police.
But Abhijit, let me counter that. If there was sympathy, since that's the word we are going with, then the armed forces would not have opened fire at students yesterday. Or even if they had opened fire, they would have hit them in the leg, which is, by the way, just a standard operating procedure, instead of aiming for their head.
True. So there are two explanations for that. Excuse me. The first, of course, is that the army realized it crossed the boundary yesterday and is now trying to distance itself in much the same way as the Bangladesh army did at that time. You remember they cracked down on the protesters initially, and then they supported the protesters and protected them. We don't know if that is a decision that has been taken. The second explanation, of course, is that the police and which did the firing yesterday is siloized, that there are units that are loyal to the government and there are units which are not loyal to the government, maybe or neutral. Maybe the neutral or not loyal units have taken control. Militaries usually don't think as a hive, especially in countries like Nepal. They're heavily siloized with different factions within the leadership. or it could just be the military and police reading the tea leaves and throwing in their lot, trying to find a retreat and keeping themselves safe if the government changes.
I'm just going to go across to Rishabh because there's more information coming in and I think we can break that as well. Abhijit, do continue to stay with us. You're giving us some good perspective on what has happened in Nepal, why it has happened.